Welcome to the DishOut TRXpay Demo. My name is Tom Deloge, and I'm the Director of Market Development for DishOut. And I have our Director of IT, Andrew Gold, with us today to navigate through this demo. DishOut is a payment technology company serving multiple verticals, including hospitality, colleges and universities, corporate campuses, and merchants, both retail and restaurant. Today, we will be reviewing our 3 software packages with modules and a high-level overview of features to help add power to your payments. The first package is TRXpay Core. This is a great package for the merchant that is currently using standalone credit card terminals that do not integrate with your current point-of-sale system. So if you are putting the total amount of the sale from your electronic cash register, for instance, into your credit card terminal, then you'll want to explore TRXpay Core. Each of these modules enables various forms of payment on one payment device. So you can do credit, debit transactions, EBT transactions, campus card transactions to accept student ID cards as payments, gift card transactions. In addition to all the traditional contactless payments and whatnot, you can also accept cash transactions and track all of your cash sales with this credit card device as well. So TRXpay Core is the software application running on a standalone credit card terminal that can handle all of your payment needs. The next package that we have is TRXpay Smart Terminal. TRXpay Smart Terminal is where Andrew is going to review the inventory features. So all of the core modules that come with TRXpay Smart Core are included with Smart Terminal, but then you can also have a POS Lite functionality with tracking inventory items and reporting. The third package that we're going to talk about today is TRXpay Smart POS. Smart POS provides the ability to utilize order ahead features with printer routing, and other use cases that provide pay at the table, pay at the door, and other pay on the go scenarios. With all of our packages, DishOut Plus is our loyalty platform that we will not be reviewing today, but please feel free to schedule a demo with us. What I'm going to show you right now is the terminals that the hardware that TRXpay runs on, and Andrew is going to be demoing today. He's going to start by going through TRXpay Core with a PAX A920 device, which is a mobile handheld device that can handle multiple use cases that Andrew will go through for payment only. We also are going to show the E700, which is a 12.5-inch screen. It's got a cashier-facing screen as well as a customer-facing screen. So for a countertop device, the PAX E700 is perfect for your POS Lite solution that you might be looking for. We also have other hardware options available, and you can please talk to your rep about any of the other hardware options. At this time, I'd like to hand over the demo to Andrew so he can start going through the TRXpay Core modules.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Tom, for that introduction. Greatly appreciate it. Now that I have my screen share up, what everybody will be able to see is that I am currently sharing the screen of that handheld A920 device that Tom was just referring to. By default, we have clerk management enabled on our terminals. And when somebody walks away from the terminal or begins to walk up to a terminal, it will be automatically prompting you for a clerk ID as displayed on my screen right now. So I'm going to go ahead and input my clerk ID and go ahead and log into the terminal. Now that I have logged into my terminal, what we will see is there are a bunch of different modules enabled on my device. So as Tom was alluding to before, TRXpay Core covers credit, debit, campus card, gift card, EBT, cash, and cash discount. On this device currently, I do only have credit card, debit card, campus card, and cash enabled. We can discuss enabling EBT and gift cards at a later point in time. To run through a quick demo of clerk management, what I'm going to do is I will swipe my finger to the left on the screen, and we will see that I have an option called clerk management. Clerk management is not a module inside of TRXpay, rather an advanced functionality. Clerk management allows you to configure clerks on the device itself, as well as in our backend reporting solution known as MPMP. When I click into clerk management, what we will see is that I have a bunch of different clerks that are here on my device, and I can choose to either edit them, delete them, or create new ones. With clerk management functionality, we have 3 roles: an administrator role, a manager role, and a user role. Administrators allow you to gain full control over the terminal, and you will be able to leverage the Android controls located at the bottom of the screen that I'm hovering over right here. When you are a manager, you do not have the capability to leave the TRXpay application and gain access to the native operating system, nor would you be able to do that from a user perspective. So as we can see, I do have a manager there and as well as an administrator. And so what we'll do is we'll circle back to the main screen, and I am now going to swipe my finger to the right to bring us back to the section where we have some modules. So to run through a quick transaction, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select credit card. And when I click on credit card, depending on the integration type for the terminal, I do have a bunch of different options here that I can select. So you have your standard sale, which is real-time transaction. Then you have your pre-authorization, as well as force capture and voice authorizations, as we can see here with the force auth. What I will do is I'm going to run through a quick sale. And so what you'll notice is the screen does change, and now I have a tax field. The tax is going to be calculated based on the configured rate that I have inside of my MPMP portal, and does get adjusted dynamically based on the amount that you're inputting here. So what I'm going to do here is just go ahead and run a transaction for $10. And right now my sales tax rate is at 8.25%. And so we'll see that it has calculated 83 cents for my tax. I'm going to go ahead and select next on my screen here. And when I do that, it will go and invoke our integration path and bring up our card input screen. So when I'm at the card input screen, I do have the capability to do a swipe, an insert, or a tap, as well as manually enter in the card. For this demo, I'm going to go ahead and insert the card. So I'm currently inserting the card. It's going out to the host and processing the transaction. And now the terminal is asking me to remove my card. When I remove my card and receive an approval, my terminal is currently configured for restaurant mode, which does allow me to sign on the device as well as leave a tip with 3% or a custom tip. So if I go ahead and select 20%, what this will do is it will calculate 20% on the total amount of the transaction and add a $2 tip into this box. If I decided I wanted to input a custom tip, I would click into the tip section right there up at the top. And so now you'll see that my keyboard is popped up and I can eliminate the $2. And let's say I want to leave a $5 tip. That then brings us to $15.83. I like that. I'm going to go ahead and select done. And now I'm going to be back to my screen where I can go ahead and sign on my device. So I'm going to go ahead and scribble there. And now I'm going to hit next. And we're going to store that transaction. And at this point, my terminal is now printing a receipt. By default, I have the customer copy set to print first. That can be enabled or disabled inside of our MPMP tool, which does allow the merchant copy to be printed first. So I am going to select yes to printing the merchant copy as well. And so now I have both a merchant copy and a customer copy of that receipt. To circle back for a second, to actually view that receipt, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select transaction logs on the second page. So I did swipe my finger to the left. Now I'm going to hit that transaction logs and I'm going to pull up the sale that I ran here. And after we ran that tip adjustment, it did go ahead and update that original receipt. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on that and then click on receipt. So the receipt does give you a breakdown of the clerk who ran the transaction by name. The SSID is a unique identifier for our backend reporting portals. I do have the last 4 digits of the account number, the card type, the entry mode. So in this case, it was a chip read. It could say contactless, or it could say swipe, or even fallback to swipe. We do have our basic information for the reference number that sits on the device. We also have the authorization code that we retrieve from when it goes out to the host. And then we do have a breakdown here of the pre-tax amount, the tax, and then the tip. And if I keep scrolling, I do have the information for the card that I went ahead and inputted into my terminal, as well as the AID and the application identifier required for EMV transactions. Down here at the bottom, what you'll notice is that I do have a print receipt option or a send receipt option. So in this case, I do have the capability to click send receipt, and I do have email and SMS receipts enabled. And so I can choose which one I'd like. And if I select email, it will ask me to prompt for an email address. If I select SMS, it will ask me to prompt for a cell phone number. I'm not going to resend that receipt, so I'm going to just go ahead and cancel that. And now I'm going to hit done. If I go back to my main screen and just run through a quick debit card transaction, very similar to what we saw before, this time I'm going to run $15. And so what we'll notice on this one is that it is a little different. So in this case, with debit card transactions, because it is a PIN-based debit transaction, you cannot run a tip adjustment after the fact. So that is based on the card brands. So we do provide the capability to run an inline tip. So let's just say I'm going to leave a $5 tip here, and that is now calculated the total amount of the transaction, the tax, and the tip. I'm going to go ahead and hit next. Again, this will bring up our card input screen, and you'll notice that there is no capability to run manual transactions. So because this is a PIN-based transaction, manual entry is not supported. So I'm going to go ahead and insert my card here. And in a moment, I'm going to get the section here for entering PIN. And I'm going to go ahead and input that PIN. It went out to the host, and now the terminal is asking me to remove the card. Again, very similar. I got customer copy and merchant copy. I'm going to hit no to that, and I'm going to circle back to my transaction logs, and let's take a look at that receipt. So previously, what you saw was I had the capability to sign for that transaction. Since this was a PIN-based transaction, down at the bottom of the receipt here, it does indicate that this transaction was verified by PIN. So you do have a very easy and distinct way to determine between a credit transaction and a PIN-based debit transaction. So I'm going to go ahead and head back to my main screen here, and I'm just going to run through a quick cash transaction. So I'm going to go ahead and click on cash. You just have your two options, which are sale and refund. I'm going to go ahead and hit sale, and I'm going to run a transaction for $50, which again calculates the tax. Go ahead and hit next. And now it's going to ask me for a bill denomination. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to input $100. And when I input $100, it does tell me what the change that would be for this transaction. I'm going to go ahead and process that. And with cash transactions, you do have the capability to print a receipt, but this does not fall into our automatic printing capability. If we scroll down a little further on this receipt, what we will see is that there is a total, right? So the amount was $50. The tax associated with that was $4.13. The total became $54.13. The amount tendered that I handed to the cashier was $100, and now it's indicating that that cashier owes me $45.87. Very similar to what we saw before on the previous screen, we do have the capability to do a print receipt or a send receipt. Send receipt does incorporate email and SMS receipts as well. So I'm going to go ahead and hit done. And now I'm back to my main screen. And so that effectively concludes TRXpay Core. To touch on very simply for reporting mechanisms, what we're going to do is from the main screen, you're going to go ahead and swipe your finger to the left, and you do have the reports option there. When you go into the reports, you have a few different reports that you can choose. So summary reports just going to give you a breakdown of each individual clerk that ran their transactions and what the overall summary is. If you go into condensed report, it does give you the capability to break out the report that you want by module. In my case, I'm going to go ahead and select credit card. And now it's going to ask me which set of users I would like to use. I'm going to go ahead and select all so I can see all the transactions ran by all my users. And so on the screen, what we'll see is it will break down total process tips, how many records there were for the EDC type of credit card. And if I want to drill in a little bit more, I'm going to go ahead and hit view all. And that changes a little bit. It does show some of the same information that you would see on the receipt. So that PN ref number, the last 4 digits of the account, what the transaction type was, the tip, and the amount of that transaction. If I scroll down a little further after I've gotten out of that, what we'll see is we have reached the end of the report. which again gives you a breakdown specifically for credit card because we honed in on the credit card module. We can, of course, go back and change to all instead of the credit card module, which will then give us a breakdown of all the individual transactions that were ran. And so we'll see, very similar to what we saw a second ago, the EDC is credit card. But if I keep scrolling down, now I have the capability to see my debit card sales. And if I keep scrolling down a little more, my cash sales as well. All of these reports are local to the terminal and can be printed up on demand. We currently do not have a retention policy for the transaction information. However, the log data displayed in the transaction logs that I was displaying before is only 30 days. You can use filters to expand that date range.
Also on that screen there, I saw the tip wizard, Andrew. Can you cover the tips? I know certain merchants will need to utilize tip mode, and just wanted to show the tip wizard for.
Yep. So very similar to what you saw before when I was in my pay at the table mode, which is where I was given the capability to select from those buttons and or input a custom tip. If you chose to not input a tip at all on that screen and just did a signature, that transaction will then be dumped into the tip wizard. And so what you'll see is that I have a bunch of different transactions here that I do have the capability to apply tips to. So what I can do is I can go ahead and insert my tips. So let's say $1 there. 150 there, and another $1 there. And what I can do is I can actually save these tips to be processed at a later point in time. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And what we'll see is now it says that the amount were saved. If I go back into the tip wizard, what you'll see is that those 3 transactions that I ran through there, they have their values retained. And so at a later point in time, I can come up into the top right-hand corner and go ahead and select process. That will then send those tip adjustments out to the host. If there are any failures associated with that tip amount, we will present a message at the bottom of the screen that says some transactions have failed. Please click here to review the transactions, which will then bring you into the transaction logs and allow you to review the host messages to determine why those tip adjustments may have been declined for any reason.
So what we've seen here so far is a payment-only device with different payment methods that are historically, card transactions and various card transactions, whether it be the credit, campus card, gift card, debit, EBT transactions and whatnot. One other benefit with TRXpay Core is that you can track your cash sales as part of your whole process with processing transactions as well. So really, this light duty PAX A920 device that's wireless. We also have hardwired solutions. There's a docking station that you can hardwire the A920 as well. So there are certain use cases where this could be all that you need, especially in cashless scenarios. There is no cash drawer integration with the A920. However, you can track your cash sales, and we have this cash module right there in the center. And Andrew, if you could maybe show a cash transaction and how somebody would track their cash sales, that would be great.
Yeah, so I think, to add on to the cash sale that I ran before, what I'm going to do here is, since I ran that cash sale, I can go into my reports as I was showing before. And if I go into that condensed report, and now let's say I want to choose the module specifically for cash, I can again choose it by user, or I can go ahead and view all of them. And when I do that, what we'll see is that I do have one transaction here. The amount of the transaction was $50. The tax on that transaction was $4.13. And then you do have the cash total here. So that's obviously from a reporting perspective. If you were interested in procuring that specific receipt for that transaction, what we can do is we can go into the transaction logs. And in certain situations, you may have a lot of transactions in your transaction logs. So what we're going to do is we're going to click this little button right here in the corner, which is going to bring up our filters. And so now, based on the modules that I have enabled on my device, I have the capability to either hone in on specifically credit card, debit card, campus card, or in my case, cash. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and select cash and then hit search. And what we'll see is we basically just gave you a very simple and very easy way to pull back that one cash transaction. And we do have the capability to issue a refund directly here from the log, which will then update itself. At the same time, you can also select receipt and just go ahead and select a print receipt. And when you print the receipt, it's going to ask you, do you want a merchant copy or a customer copy? The reason we prompt for cash is a lot of people no longer want cash receipts, and to save paper, we just allow the merchant to decide what receipt they'd like to print. So I'm going to go ahead and select merchant copy. And now I'm getting a printout of this cash sale. And so again, this cash sale, even on my receipt that gets printed, shows me the pre-tax amount of $50, the tax amount of $4.13, with a total of $54.13. It does also display out the amount that was tendered to the cashier. In this case, that was a $100 amount. And then the change associated with that transaction is $45.87. And if I scroll down here, what you'll see is that everything I was just explaining, which is also displayed on screen, is also displayed on my printed receipt.
Great, thank you. So now the next thing that we wanted to go through is our package that is called TRXpay Smart Terminal, which will include all of the payment functionality that Andrew just went through. What he's going to be bringing up now is he's going to be demoing TRXpay Smart Terminal and TRXpay Smart POS on a PAX E700 device. So that was the E700 that I showed at the beginning of the presentation. And that is a countertop device that has a cashier-facing screen as well as a customer-facing screen. And Andrew will be going through that. There's certainly some more screen real estate. So when you start getting into inventory items, you can certainly use a PAX A920, a smaller handheld device, and ring up items and categories, items, and whatnot. However, for use cases where you want a bigger screen, the E700 will come into play, as well as any kind of cash drawer integration. So if you do want to have a POS functionality where you can track those cash sales, and also the cash management function to manage what your till starts with at the beginning of the day, and managing the cash the cash sales as well. So at this point, Andrew's going to go through the inventory features, as well as some more item reporting as well, that you can track your inventory items as well with your point of sale system.
Great. Thanks, Tom. And very similarly to what we saw on that A920 device, on my E700, when I go ahead and either open my application, walk up to the terminal, or walk away from it, the default screen is going to be asking me for that clerk ID. So I am going to go ahead and log into this terminal, very similarly to the way that I did on that A920. And again, very similar to what you saw before. The only difference here is that we're on a bigger facing device. So I do have, certain modules enabled here. As we can see, since this is the TRXpay Smart Terminal, we do have the capability to do inventory. So the TRXpay Smart Terminal package is what enables you to do what we like to call quick serve inventory. So this is really where you're running a very small retail store or restaurant. In my case, my inventory is set up for a restaurant. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and select the inventory module. And when I select the inventory module, I have a bunch of different categories that show up on my screen. So I'm going to go ahead and click into the appetizers category. Drills down one more. And so now I can see the items that exist inside of that category. I'm going to go ahead and grab some blossom petals. And with the blossom petals, it comes with blossom sauce. That is not a requirement. It is an optional modifier. But let's say I would like that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and click on that modifier. And when I go ahead and click continue, that's going to go ahead and drag it into the cart. Unfortunately, the terminal itself moves a little bit faster than the rendering of the screen. So what happens when you click on that is it will actually get dragged across the screen, and it will change the color of the cart over here. It'll grab a little circle and put it in red with the number indicating quantity that is currently in your cart. When you're in the cart, which is displayed here on the right-hand side, you do have the capability to make quick modifications, so you can add or subtract, as well as click into this box and input a numerical value to indicate how many of these you want. So as an example, if I were to just go ahead and hit the green button, that will just increment by 1. If I hit the red button, it will decrement by 1. The same thing is if you only have one item in your cart and you hit that red button, it will remove that item from your cart. And so now my shopping cart is empty. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go back into appetizers again. I'm going to click those blossom petals. I'm going to add that modifier, hit continue. And again, what we'll see is that it does increment now with the number 1 in there. If I go ahead and back into appetizers, and now I'm going to grab a classic nacho. Classic nachos come with guac. I'm going to go ahead and say, yes, I want the guac, and hit continue. And so what we'll notice is that my total is getting updated each time I add an item into my cart. So I'm going to go ahead and hit next. And when I hit next, because I have multiple modules enabled on my device, it will ask me how I would like to process that, either a credit card or cash in my case. I'm going to go ahead and select credit card. And now what we'll see is a brief breakdown of something that Tom was touching on before, known as cash discount. Okay, so I have cash discount enabled on my device. Cash discount is fully compliant and is subject for any credit or debit cards. And so what we'll see is I do have the amount broken down here. I do not have any tax enabled on these items. When using inventory, tax is defined on an item by item basis, and we can support up to 4 individual tax rates. There are certain circumstances where liquor or food, depending on what your geographical location is, may require more than 1 tax rate. For example, you can have a base sales tax rate, which is your food tax for the state, and you could also have an additional tax specifically for food or liquor in certain cases. And then we have the cash discount, which is the customer service charge. And so what we'll see is that we grab the $16.78 plus the 67 cents, which equals out to 3.9% and bringing us to a total of $17.45. And since I selected credit card, now I'm going to go ahead and hit next. The terminal is now going to say, please wait while paying. And since this does have a customer-facing device, the device on the front-facing display is asking me to either insert, swipe, or tap. I'm going to go ahead and tap my card this time. And now the terminal is asking me to remove my card after tapping, and my transaction has been approved. Very similarly to what you saw before on the other receipt, you will see that we do have the capability here to view the items on the receipt. And I'm going to go ahead and hit done and swing back over to my transaction logs and click on that sale again. And I do have a minimized version of that here on my screen. I do have the capability to do a print receipt or send receipt in certain examples. All right, so right now, since my terminal is configured in restaurant mode and it's in the tip adjustment, which is sort of that old school tip adjustment functionality, there's an expectation that you're going to print up a receipt and bring it over to a customer, have them sign for that tip, and then you would apply that tip at a later point in time, which is why that send receipt is grayed out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and hit done. I'm going to go back one screen. And I'm now going to go into the tip wizard, which we discussed on the A920 series as well. And so when I go into that tip wizard, I'm only going to see that one transaction there. I'm going to go ahead and input that box. I'm going to go $5. And instead of saving it, since I only have one tip here, I'm just going to go ahead and write out and hit process in the top right-hand corner, which goes and will process that tip adjustment. Okay, and so now we see that that transaction has completed. If I go back one screen and I would like to see that receipt again, I can go into the transaction logs, very similarly to what we saw before. Sale here, followed by that tip adjustment, and the original sale receipt does get updated. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And now I'm going to go ahead and hit receipt. And so now what we'll see is that the send receipt box is black, which means I can now go ahead and either email or SMS that receipt. And so very similar to what I showed you before, you get that same prompt, which shows you the email or the SMS. Go ahead and hit done. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to get into the categories and inventory management, which is how you can create categories, you can create subcategories, items, and then you can configure your items. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and select Inventory Manager. And so now we have a bunch of different options here. So we do have the capability to do check-in, which is based on items that already exist or new stock. You do have the capability to check stock, which reaches out to our inventory cloud environment that allows you to pull down an active and constant list of how many items are left in stock. You have the capability to search all of your inventory. You have analytics, which is all of our reports that we'll get into in just a moment. You have the transfer manager, which allows you to transfer inventory from one store to another. And then you have the management capability, which allows you to manage categories, subcategories, and individual items. So for this purpose, I'm going to go into the manage section here. And very similar to what you saw before, I have a bunch of different categories. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on my appetizers category. And now you'll see that I have a bunch of different items. I'm going to go ahead and click on the classic nachos. And when I click on the classic nachos, now I am in the official management of this item. This is where I can define item details like the image that show up here. I can define 3-letter designator. I can do quantities. I can tag certain items. I can define an inventory on-hand threshold, what display order that item is inside of the actual category list. I can input barcodes or SKUs. And specifically on the barcodes, we do support some external USB-based barcode scanners, which allow you to do on-demand barcode scanning for items that you have in your location. So to discuss very quickly about the inventory on-hand threshold, based on the number that you have defined here in this inventory on-hand threshold and an email address that is provided to us during setup, if you start to get near that inventory on-hand threshold, and so in my case, this is 5. And so if I get to my 5 on the classic nachos, whoever the email address is on file will get an email indicating that you are close to meeting the inventory on-hand threshold and you may need to restock those items. If I scroll down here into the pricing information, what we'll see is that we do have the capability to support a various amount of different prices. So we have the item price, that's what you're going to sell the item for. We do have the manufacturer suggested retail price, the unit cost, which is what you pay for those items. And in certain cases, you may have wholesale prices for certain vendors that come to you. With this information, with the MSRP, the unit cost, and the item price, this is how we can use that information to your advantage and help you build your analytical reporting, such as item report, profitability, profit margin, which is all part of the analytical reports that we'll be taking a look at in just a minute. If I scroll down here into tax information, what we'll see is that I do have the capability to define certain tax rates. Okay, so tax rate 1, as an example, this is what we consider to be our base sales tax. And so in this example, let's go and make a change. So I'm going to set this to 7%. Okay, 7%. And we'll see that our base sales tax is already enabled there. I'm going to go ahead and save that. Okay, so if we take a step back and go back to our primary screen where we saw all of our modules, if I go ahead and click into inventory this time, I click on appetizers, I go into classic nachos, add that guac again. What we'll see in the bottom right-hand corner is now that I have a tax rate assigned there, it's going to physically define that item based on the total amount plus the tax rate that you have defined inside of that item. When you print up these receipts, that will also be present there as well. Now that we've seen that, let's go ahead and head back to the inventory manager so I can finish showing you the different options. So we do have the capability to support some nutrition information. This is going to be much longer play with our online ordering products soon to come. We do have the capability to define certain nutritional items based on milligrams, and you can increment or decrement them based on either using the plus and the minus or manually clicking into the individual boxes to define what the milligrams are for those. And now we can get into our modifiers. So when I click on my modifiers, I have the capability to either delete, as we can see here on the right, or I can go ahead and add. When I go ahead and add, I have the capability to either choose from a list of existing modifiers that I just went ahead and pulled down from my inventory cloud environment, or I can go ahead and I can create new. Let's just say I'm going to create new. When I create new, it's going to ask me for a modifier name, a description for that modifier, and then the price associated with that modifier. Since I already have a modifier assigned here, I'm not going to go ahead and add anything on, except maybe I want to say, since I'm grabbing classic nachos, let me add chicken and beef, and I'll even throw some ranch in there. And I'm going to save that up. When I save that, right now I'm in a temporary state until I actually save the item, which then goes and writes that data up to the inventory cloud. Speaking on, since we're in the inventory manager, and this will be part of the next portion of the demo, which is order ahead. That's going to be part of TRXpay Smart POS. And this actually allows you to define whether or not you want this item to be applicable for order ahead. Generally speaking, when we talk about order ahead, it's generally could be to-go orders, or it could be someone sitting down at a table. And so there may be certain circumstances where you have a terminal that is specifically defined for pickup. And so you don't want to allow someone to place an order for alcohol and leave the premise with that alcohol. And so those alcoholic beverages would not be toggled on for order ahead. If we scroll down,
any kind of order ahead scenario does that mean that it's like an open check scenario? So anytime you need to have an open check, you would have to have order ahead?
Correct.
Got it.
We do have some temperature applicable items. And so if you are using kitchen printers, which again is going to play a role into Smart POS, it will print up on the ticket how you'd like that cooked. We do have some predefined items there for temperature applicable, which we'd be happy to go through on another demo. We do also have the capability to discount your item, whether it's in dollars, in percentage, or no discount at all. And so if I wanted, I could say I'm going to discount this 50 cents. And now what I'm going to do is I'm making two changes to this item. I'm going to scroll back up, and I made those changes for the modifiers. And now I'm also going to allow a 50-cent discount with this item. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save. Okay, looks like I have some type of server error there. Let's see if I can save it just that. Yep, so it does look like the item discount is having a little bit of a challenge. Not to worry. Let's go back to our main screen now. Let's take a look at that inventory item. When I click into that appetizer section and add the classic nachos, those modifiers that I just went ahead and added to there, I now see that I can go ahead and add that. So as an example, I'm going to grab guac, which is an extra $1, and I'm going to add chicken, which is an extra $10. I'm going to go ahead and continue. And so what we'll see is that the total amount has updated, and the tax at 7% rate with the items inside of this cart are now there. So let's go ahead and run through this real quick. This time I'm going to go ahead and run a cash transaction. With cash, since I do have cash discount enabled, I have the cash discount side of the house set to 4.125%. And so now I'm actually incentivizing my customer to pay with cash rather than to pay credit. And so what we'll see is we do provide a breakdown of what the credit card transaction would be. So in this case, there would be a 79-cent fee associated with the credit card transaction. But in the use case of paying cash, I'm actually getting an 82-cent discount, which brings my total to $21.13. I'm going to go ahead and hit next. And so now it's asking me, am I going to either pay in a full amount, or am I going to do a bill denomination? In this case, I'm going to do a bill denomination. I'm going to go ahead and hit $50. When I do $50, very similar to what we saw on the A920, it does go ahead and ask me to make change. When I make change, as an example, in the Smart POS world, there will be a cash drawer associated with this E700 that I'm using. And so after this transaction is completed, it'll go ahead and pop that drawer, and it'll tell me what I need to give the customer as it relates to making change. And so what we see here is, and for some reason my screen is not allowing me to scroll, but we do provide a breakdown here of the inventory items, any modifiers that are associated with that, as well as the amount. And very similar, we do have the capability to print or send the receipt. Right. So now what we'll do is we'll sort of do a little bit of a gap bridging here between Smart Terminal and Smart POS, right? So I did go on to explain about the Smart POS does have the capability to pop a cash drawer. And what we will do now is we will dive into order ahead features, which does and can be used with TRXpay Smart Terminal. That can be done on an A920 or on an E-Series device with the bigger screen. So I'm going to start the order on the E700, and then I'm going to go pick that order up on the A920. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and click into the Orders module. I'm going to go ahead and click Create Order. And so very similar to what we see in all of our inventory screens, whether it's, the quick serve mode or sending orders up to the cloud, which then have kitchen printer routing, it's going to look very similar. So I'm going to go ahead and click that appetizers again. I'm going to go add some ranch and some beef to those nachos. This time I'm not going to take the guac. And we will see our tax rate and the total amount of that transaction does populate. This time, when I hit next, instead of asking for payment, I have my originator ID field here, which is used in conjunction with our order ahead module called customer name. And so that allows me to give a very unique definition of the name or cell phone number or buzzer number that you may hand out to a customer when it gets sent up to the cloud and is then go ahead and pulled out. So I'm just going to go ahead and put Tom's name here for my order, and I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And so what that just did was it sent an order up to the cloud. And now imagine this is sitting in a restaurant where you have some kitchen printer routing. Since some of the food is going to need to be prepared by someone on a grill and someone is going to need to be preparing the nacho portion of it, that could potentially be split off into two different printers. So it could be sent to the grill cook or it could be sent to the person who's going to prepare your nachos. And what I'm going to do really quickly is I'm going to circle back on my A920 device here. So I'm going to just go ahead and pass the presenter role to my A920. And I'm going to make him the presenter. Again, very similar. We're going to go ahead and input that clerk ID. And so now I have this A920 handheld in my possession. I'm going to go walk up to the table and ask them if they'd like anything else added to their check. They may say yes. They may say no. If they say yes, what I can do here is I can click on the orders module again. And this time, instead of creating an order, we're going to go do an update order. I'm going to update that order. And very similar to what we just saw on that E700, it's again prompting me for that customer name. So I'm going to go ahead and type in Tom and click OK. That's going to go reach out to our cloud environment and ask for any order that's associated with the customer name of Tom. And so what we'll see, as I just went ahead and pulled that down, it does break down what items are on there and any modifiers associated with it. And I'm going to go and click on that item. And so again, this is on an A920, so the screen real estate is a little different, and you don't see the cart over there on the right-hand side. If you are interested in bringing the cart down, what you can do is right over here in the corner, you can go ahead and click on that cart, and it will bring down that cart for you. Again, very similar to what you saw on the bigger screen device. It does break down the total and the tax. But in this case, my customer wants to add Texas cheese fries to their order. So I'm going to go and I'm going to add a full order of Texas cheese fries. I do have some modifiers to find here. So I'm going to add onions, bacon, cheese, and some ranch. I'm going to go ahead and hit continue. And it went ahead and dragged that item up into the cart. And so if I go ahead and click on the cart now, what we'll see is I went ahead and added the full order of Texas cheese fries, which did incur an additional cost down here on my total. So now I'm going to go ahead and hit next. And because I pulled this order down using Tom's name, this just went and sent another ticket to the kitchen printer, which does have Tom's name on there with the update for that. While the customer is waiting, we ask them if they'd like to pay. They would say yes. What we're going to do is we're going to click this little module over here called Slingshot. Slingshot powers our order ahead module. So again, very similar to what you saw when we created the order and we updated the order. It's now prompting for a customer name. So I'm going to go ahead and input Tom here and click OK. It's going to go and pull down the order like it just did. And so now I have the capability to split the check by one person or two person, or I can just go ahead and outright process the transaction. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and process that transaction. And since I do have a bunch of other modules here on my terminal, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to select a credit card. It is going to bring up our card input screen. And this time, I'm actually going to tap on that A920. So I'm going to put the card up against it. It's asking me to remove that card. Goes through and process it. And very similar to what you saw before, we're back to that screen where we do have the capability to apply a tip percentage, a manual tip, and sign for that. I'm just going to go ahead and put 20% on this one, and I'm going to sign and hit next. It completes. Now it's going to print up my customer copy. And my customer copy of that receipt does display everything that you saw before on the receipt, plus the individual items and their modifiers. And so what I'll do is I'm going to hit no to that merchant copy. I'm going to go swipe my finger to the left and head back into those transaction logs. I'm going to click on that sale that we just ran and pull up the receipt. If I scroll down here, what you'll see is that the same information that you submitted when you created the order to the order ahead module and then updated when you went to go pull down for payment, that same information shows up here on the receipt. And so what we'll see is that the full order of Texas cheese fries was $8.79. And then the classic nachos, which included the house-made ranch and the beef for an extra $10, was right there as well. We do break down the tax and the tip, followed by the total, as well as the signature and those EMV tags.
So a good example for this use case with TRXpay Smart POS would be a concession stand that at the stand you may have the E700 device and the normal line that would line up, placing orders at the counter. And then if you wanted to do some line busting with a PAX A920, you could actually take orders remotely and do some line busting, recall those orders with Slingshot, and that would require TRXpay Smart POS.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Appreciate that. And so now, since we're talking about the capability to do line busting and paying for items on the device, now let's get into some reporting aspects when it comes down to the inventory analytics. So before, what we saw was that I went ahead and created the order on the E700, but then I picked it up on the A920. So the question now, I'm sure everybody's asking is, well, how do I make sure that I have those reports across both devices? So I'm actually going to show you what that looks like from both an A920 perspective and an E700 perspective. I'm going to go ahead and hit done here. I'm going to go back. And so just like we saw on that E700, there's our inventory manager. And so when I click into inventory manager, again, very similar to what we saw on that E700, now I'm going to drill into those analytical reports. So when I drill into the analytical reports, you'll see that we do have a bunch of different reports here that are available for use. We have the items, profitability, tax report, tax exempt, low stock, inventory on hand, and if you're doing anything with inventory transfer or returned items, we do have individual reports for that. The tax exempt report is only going to be applicable when you are doing tax exempt sales. If you're interested in that, please feel free to inquire with us on another demo. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drill into the items report real quick. And that's going to go out to this cloud server, and it's going to pull down the 3-letter designator associated with those items, the quantity, and the total sales. Now, the 3-letter designator is just used for screen real estate, specifically on the A920, to make everything work. If you'd like to see what each one of those are, you just go ahead and click on that 3-letter designator, and it'll actually pull up the name of those items. So we'll see that that one is the classic nachos, and the BLP is the blossom petals. Very simple, very basic item report. That item report can be emailed out here. It does get generated in the CSV file and can be sent to whatever email address you would need. So now let's go back and let's drill into this profitability report. So again, back to the conversation that we were having about the information that you can submit to us on the items. All right. In this case, since I don't have much in there, it's telling me that my profit margin is 100% because it doesn't know that I paid a different price for the unit. So if you provide us with that data, we will help generate these reports for you. And again, very similar, you can email these reports out. If I go back and now let's say I go pull a tax report. What we'll see is that the total tax rate 1 says that it was ran through for 62 cents. I do not have any other tax rates defined here on my configuration. So specifically, since we were touching base on the inventory on hand report, if I go ahead and click on that inventory on hand report, what we'll see is that the quantity sold and the current quantity that's left. And since I'm negative on both of those items, it's telling me that A, I couldn't really sell them, and B, that the current quantity is 0 because I'm negative on those items. And so that will generate an automatic email that goes out and it will send those to me. So now let's switch gears for a second. I'm going to give my E700 back to present a roll. And we're going to go pull up those same reports just so we can show that they are being spanned across your merchant and across all of your merchant's devices. Again, very similar, that clerk ID being prompted. I'm going to go ahead and swipe my finger to the left, click on that inventory manager, click on those analytics, and I'm going to hit the items report. And so very similar to what we saw before. We do have the 3-letter designator coming down. We do have the quantity of those items that we sold, and we do have the total sales there. And so if we decide to click on the 3-letter designator, very similar to what we saw before, which is the classic nachos. And same thing for the BLP, which would be the blossom petals. Again, very similar. If we go pull out that profitability report, it's going to tell me that my profit margin is 100% because I'm not defining what those unit costs are. Same thing for the tax. It'll go ahead and pull those up, and we will be able to see each one of them, as well as the inventory on hand report, because it is reaching out to the server. And so what this ultimately means is that you could have a variety of devices that are at a physical location. If you then decided that you wanted one of your general managers or regional managers to have the capability to view some of this data at home without needing to request it from the restaurant, we can set you up with a tablet-based profile that will allow you to install TRXpay on the device, and you will be able to view these types of transactions in real time, since all of that is getting reported back to our cloud environment. All of that being said, that concludes my demo of TRXpay Core, TRXpay Smart Terminal, and TRXpay Smart POS. It looks like Tom brought up something about the cash discount program, but it does look like he is muted. Tom, if you could go ahead and unmute yourself.
Thanks, Andrew. So when Andrew was going through the transactions there, you saw some examples of how the cash discount program displays on the receipts, and you might have been scratching your head saying, what exactly is a cash discount program? Well, a cash discount program is simply a way for you to pass the cost of the credit card acceptance back to customers who choose to pay with a credit card or debit card. For those who decide to pay by cash, there is no additional cost. Those thresholds and the amounts, whatever you set the service fee for and the cash discount, have to be different. And we can work with you to determine what is the best for your location. The cash discount program seamlessly allows the business owner to recoup credit card processing fees that they have historically absorbed, and it provides you immediate additional cash flow to the business. So it's an excellent way to save up to 95% of your credit card processing fees. But again, just like everything that we have, you can use all, some, or part of what we have within our payment toolkit. So if you're interested in any of our packages that we went through today with TRXpay, or if you have any other questions pertaining to the demo, we'd be happy to set up and schedule a more detailed conversation with you to answer any of those detailed questions, as well as a customized demo for you as well. You can reach us at info@getdishout.com. Thank you and have a great day.